For a long time, humans were the new kids in the galaxy. They had only just reached the stars when they found out they were not alone. Hundreds of other species were already out there, talking, trading, and making rules together in something called the Galactic Concord. Earth joined, hopeful and eager. They wanted to learn, to help, to belong. But the other species did not treat humans like equals. Most saw them as loud, messy, and too quick to act. The Varelians, who had lived for thousands of years and ran most of the Concord's decisions, spoke slowly and moved even slower. They called human ideas rash and emotionally driven. They smiled politely when humans spoke in council meetings, then ignored every word. Chris Langley was one of Earth's youngest diplomats. He was calm, smart, and good with words. He spent his days in the tall silver halls of the Concord's central station, orbiting a quiet blue star. Every morning he walked past aliens twice his height with skin like stone, or floating jelly-like beings who communicated through color shifts. He never complained. He believed if humans just showed they could be trusted, things would change. Lena Ruiz worked nearby in the science wing. She was an astrophysicist from New Mexico, with sharp eyes and a quiet laugh. She studied cosmic anomalies, strange ripples in space that no one else understood. Her work had helped fix navigation errors for half the Concord fleet. Yet when she presented her findings, the Varelian Review Board would say, "Interesting. We will consider this in the next cycle." That next cycle never came. Out beyond the safe zones of the Concord, human colonies struggled. On Epsilon 9, a cold rock rich in rare metals, miners worked 16-hour shifts to keep Earth's growing cities powered. They sent regular reports to Concord security asking for patrols. The Corax, a brutal, warlike species, kept raiding their supply lines. Ships vanished. Workers disappeared. The Concord called the Corax historically misunderstood and refused to label them as enemies. Conflict only grows when you feed it, the Varelians would say. Humans kept feeding the Concord instead. They built faster engines, shared medical breakthroughs, and even repaired damaged alien ships for free. They hoped kindness would earn respect. But respect never came, only more requests, more delays, more silence. Chris once asked a Varelian elder why humans were never given real votes on security matters. The elder blinked his 3 eyelids slowly and said, "Your species has only been spacefaring for 2 centuries. We have governed peace for 20,000 years. You must learn patience," Chris nodded. He went back to his small office and filed another request for protection for Epsilon 9. It joined hundreds of others in a digital queue that moved slower than ice melting in shadow. Lena, meanwhile, noticed something strange. Human research stations kept losing contact, not all at once, but one by one. Each time, the station's non-human staff reported nothing unusual. Technical glitch, they'd say, or human error, but Lena knew better. She had friends on those stations. Good scientists. Careful people. They didn't just vanish because of a glitch. She tried to raise the issue in a science council meeting. A Varelian delegate interrupted her halfway through. "Your concern is noted, Dr. Ruiz. However, internal human matters should be handled internally. The Concord respects your autonomy." The words sounded kind, but the tone was final. The meeting moved on. That night, Lena sat alone in her quarters, staring at a star map dotted with red markers, each one a missing station. She felt a cold knot in her stomach. It wasn't fear. It was something worse. The feeling that no one was listening and no one ever would. Back on Earth, people still believed in the dream of unity. Children learned alien languages in school. News channels showed smiling humans shaking tentacles with diplomats. But in the shipyards of Mars and the deep space docks near Jupiter, workers whispered different stories. They talked about ships coming back with bullet holes no one would explain. About rescue signals that went unanswered for weeks. About promises that sounded nice but meant nothing. Marcus Boone was one of those workers. He flew scout runs along the outer rim, checking on remote outposts. He was quiet, with calloused hands and a dry sense of humor. He didn't care much for politics, but he cared about people. When Epsilon 9 went dark for the 3rd time that year, he volunteered to go check on it himself. His ship, the Wayfarer, was old but reliable. As he approached the mining station, his sensors showed power still running, life signs stable, but no response to hails. When he docked and stepped inside, the place was empty. Not wrecked. Not burned. Just empty. Coffee cups sat on tables. Tools lay where they'd been dropped. But every human was gone. The Varelian overseer on site, a tall being named Zoran, greeted Marcus calmly. "Ah, the human inspector. Your colleagues chose to return to Earth early. They found the work too stressful." Marcus looked around. Stressful? They left their personal gear. Their pets. Their kids' drawings on the walls. Zoran tilted his head. Humans are emotional. Perhaps they acted on impulse. Marcus didn't argue. He scanned the station's logs. Everything had been wiped clean, except for a tiny fragment in the medical bay's backup drive. He copied it without saying a word. When he got back to Concord Station, he gave the file to Lena. She decrypted it late that night. It was a voice recording, badly damaged but clear enough. It was Dr. Helen Cho, a friend of Lena's from university. Her voice was shaky but calm. "They're not raiding us," Helen whispered. "They're taking us. Not for slaves. Not for ransom. They say our neural patterns are compatible. They're running tests. Don't trust the logs. Don't trust anyone who says we left on our own." Lena played the message 3 times. Then she sat very still in the dark. The next day, she and Chris met in a quiet corner of the station cafeteria. She told him everything. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he didn't look angry. He looked tired. "We have to go to the council," he said. "We already know what they'll say," Lena replied. "Then we say it louder," Chris said. "We keep saying it until someone hears." But deep down, they both knew the truth. The Concord wasn't broken. It was working exactly as it always had, just not for humans. And somewhere far out in the cold dark, more humans were vanishing. Not with a bang, but with silence. Humanity had been patient. Very patient. But patience, like air or water, only lasts so long. And in the quiet halls of the Concord, no one noticed the change coming. Not yet. Part 2. The silence from Viridia 3 was different. It wasn't just a missing signal or a delayed reply. It was total. No comms, no beacon, no emergency ping. Just dead air where a busy research station should have been humming with data. Chris Langley felt it in his gut before the official alert even came through. He'd been reviewing old trade logs when the Concord's central alert system flashed red for Sector Theta 7, Viridia's location. His fingers froze over the screen. He knew that station. He'd helped negotiate its joint human-Varelian charter 2 years ago. Dr. Helen Cho had been there, and now she was gone. Marcus Boone was already suited up before the dispatch order arrived. He didn't wait for permission. He ran to his ship, the Wayfarer, and launched within minutes. No one stopped him. No one cared enough to try. The trip took 3 days. Marcus flew with his jaw set and his eyes on the stars. He didn't sleep much. When Viridia III finally filled his viewport, a pale moon wrapped in ice and shadow, he slowed his approach. Sensors showed power running, life support active, but again, no response. He docked at Bay 2, the human side of the station. The airlock opened without issue. Inside, the lights were on. Panels glowed softly. A half-eaten meal sat on a tray in the mess hall, but not a single human in sight. The Varelian section was different. It was full. Scientists moved calmly through corridors, running tests, logging data, acting as if nothing had happened. Their leader, Zoran, the same one from Epsilon 9, greeted Marcus at the junction between the 2 wings. "Ah, another human inspector," Zoran said, his voice smooth as glass. "Your people left suddenly. Emotional instability, we believe. They requested immediate extraction. We complied." "Left?" Marcus asked. "All of them at once?" "Such is the nature of your species," Zoran replied. "Impulsive, fragile." Marcus didn't argue. He walked through the human labs. Everything was too neat. Beds made, consoles logged out, personal lockers closed. No signs of struggle, no panic. Just absence. It felt wrong in a way he couldn't explain. He checked the station's main server. Wiped clean. But he remembered what worked last time. He went to the medical bay, pried open the backup drive behind the diagnostic panel and found a sliver of corrupted data. He copied it fast and left without another word. Back on Concord Station, Lena Ruiz waited in her lab, arms crossed, eyes tired. She hadn't slept since Marcus left. When he handed her the drive, she plugged it in without speaking. The file was worse than the last one, more damaged. But after hours of cleaning the signal, she found it, a voice. Helen Cho again. Barely a whisper. They're not taking us for labor, she said, voice trembling but clear. They're harvesting us. Not our tech, us. Our brains. Our nerve clusters. They say human neural tissue adapts faster than any other species. They're testing how long we last. Under pain, Lena's hands shook. She played it again. Then again. Each time the words cut deeper. She called Chris. He came running. When he heard the recording, his face went pale. He didn't cry. He didn't shout. He just stood very still, like a man who had just seen the ground disappear beneath his feet. They took the file to the Concord Security Council the next morning. The chamber was tall and cold, filled with delegates from dozens of species. Chris stood at the human podium and played the audio for everyone to hear. When it ended, silence filled the room. Then a Varelian elder cleared his throat. "This recording is unverified," he said. "The source is compromised. Human stress can create false memories. We advise against spreading unconfirmed claims." "But the station is empty," Chris said, voice tight. "Every human gone. The logs erased. That's not stress. That's evidence." "Or coincidence," another delegate added. "A reptilian from the Cathari collective. Humans vanish from their own colonies all the time. Perhaps they flee their own failures." Lena stepped forward. "We have 3 other stations reporting disappearances in the last month. Same pattern. Humans gone, non-humans stay, logs wiped. You call that coincidence?" The Varelian elder raised a hand. "Dr. Ruiz, your passion is noted, but the Concord does not act on suspicion. We require proof. Solid, undeniable proof." "We just gave you proof," Chris said quietly. "No," the elder replied. "You gave us a whisper." The meeting ended. No action was taken. No investigation launched. The file was filed under unsubstantiated human concerns and locked away. That night, Chris sat alone in his quarters, staring at Earth through the viewport. He thought about his little sister, working on a terraforming project near Alpha Centauri. He thought about Helen Cho, who used to send him funny messages about alien coffee substitutes. He thought about how politely the Concord had dismissed them, as if they were children telling ghost stories. Lena didn't sleep at all. She went through every missing persons report from the last 6 months. She cross-referenced ship logs, supply manifests, medical records. She found a pattern no one else had noticed. Every vanished human had undergone a routine neural scan within a week of disappearing. The scans were required by Concord health protocols, administered by Varelian certified medics, she told Marcus. He didn't say much. Just nodded and started checking his ship's weapons systems, something he'd never done before. 2 days later, another alert came. Station K-12 near the Helios belt. Human crew missing. Non-human staff reporting voluntary departure due to psychological fatigue. This time, Chris didn't go to the council. He sent a message directly to Earth Command. Simple, clear. "We are not safe. They are taking us. Do not trust Concord medical or security channels." The reply came fast. "Understood. Stand by." Across human space, quiet changes began. Freighters rerouted. Colonies powered down non-essential comms. Medical teams stopped using Concord-certified scanners. No one announced it. No one made a speech. But humans started watching their backs. Then came the worst news yet. A deep-range probe launched months ago to study a dark nebula returned early. Its memory core held a single image, captured by accident during a lens calibration. It showed a Varelian freighter, far outside approved routes, venting organic waste into space. Floating in the debris were human fingers. Still wearing ID rings, Lena verified the rings. Matched them to missing personnel from Epsilon 9. She didn't show the image to the Concord. She sent it to every human colony, every ship captain, every research outpost. One message accompanied it. They lied. We believed them. No more. Chris watched the message spread like fire through human networks. He felt something shift inside him, not anger, not yet, but certainty. The kind that comes when you finally stop hoping and start seeing clearly. Marcus prepped the Wayfarer for another run. This time, he wasn't going alone. 3 other scout ships would follow, armed and ready. Not to fight, just to watch, to record, to remember. On Earth, the president addressed the Global Assembly in private session. No broadcast, no press. Just one sentence. If they want to treat us like lab rats, they'll learn we bite back. No one declared war. No one fired a shot. But something had changed. The patience that had held humanity back for decades, the belief that if they just behaved, if they just waited, they'd be accepted, was gone. In its place was something quiet, something hard, something that didn't need to shout to be heard, and out in the dark the disappearances didn't stop. But now every missing human left behind a name, a face, a story, and humans for the first time were writing it all down, not for the conquered, but for themselves. Because they knew deep down that the next time someone vanished, it wouldn't end with silence. Part 3. The change did not come with explosions or speeches. It came in quiet actions, small at first, then spreading like roots under stone. Humans stopped asking. They started doing. On Mars, engineers halted work on the new Concord relay hub. They didn't explain why. They just powered down the site and walked away. In the orbital docks near Jupiter, human freighters stopped accepting Concord cargo manifests. They ran their own routes now, using old Earth-based navigation codes no alien system could read. On Luna, scientists shut off data feeds to the central Concord archive. Their research stayed human. Chris Langley stood in his office on Concord Station and watched it happen through secure channels. He no longer wore the blue diplomat sash. He'd taken it off the day after the image of the floating fingers reached Earth. Now he wore a plain gray uniform, like the ones worn by station security. It wasn't a threat. It was a statement. He was no longer here to please. He was here to protect. He sent one final message to the High Council. Not angry, not loud. Just clear. We are no longer asking for justice. We are preparing for it, the Varelians laughed. Not out loud, but in their way. Through slow blinks and exchanged glances during closed sessions. They thought humans were bluffing. They thought this was just another emotional outburst that would fade in a week. They were wrong. Lena Ruiz coordinated the science withdrawal from her lab. She didn't destroy anything. She just stopped sharing. Human quantum models, neural mapping algorithms, even basic atmospheric calibration data, all went dark to non-human eyes. Within days, half the Concorde's deep space navigation systems began glitching. Their long-range comms, powered by human-built neutrino relays, started dropping signals. Not because the tech failed, because humans had quietly rerouted the signal paths to internal-only channels. No sabotage, no violence, just silence. Marcus Boone led the first scout fleet beyond the Concorde's outer rim. 4 ships, all human-made, all running on closed-loop systems. They didn't carry weapons meant to destroy. They carried sensors, recorders, and encrypted beacons. Their job wasn't to fight. It was to watch, to find, to bring back truth. They found a Corax raiding party stripping a derelict human cargo hauler near the Ophian belt. The Corax expected easy prey. Instead, they found Marcus's ships waiting in the shadow of an asteroid. No warning shots, no demands, just a tight formation, engines humming, blocking their escape. The Corax fired. Marcus didn't return fire. He activated a pulse field, new tech untested outside Earth labs. It scrambled the Corax ship's systems without damaging hull or life support. Within minutes, all 3 raiders were dead in space, drifting, helpless. Marcus broadcast one message on open frequency. Touch human property again, and next time we won't be gentle. Then he left. No prisoners. No trophies. Just a warning hanging in the void. Back on Earth, people watched the footage. Not on Concord news feeds. Those still called it isolated human aggression. But on private networks, in colony mess halls, in schoolrooms on Titan and Ceres, they saw it. They saw humans standing firm. Not begging. Not running. Just holding the line. Derek Shaw watched it from the bridge of the UN's Resolute, a destroyer being refitted in lunar dry dock. He'd been a freighter pilot once, hauling ice from Europa. Now he wore a captain's insignia and studied fleet tactics late into the night. He knew war might come, and if it did, humans would not fight like the Conquered expected. Slow, formal, bound by ancient rules. They would fight fast, smart, and together. That was the real surprise for the other species. Unity. Humans had always seemed divided. Nations, factions, old Earth grudges. But now every colony, every ship, every scientist and miner and child spoke with one voice. Not because a leader told them to, because they had all seen the same truth. No one else would save them. They had to save themselves. The Concorde tried to respond. The Varelians called an emergency session. They demanded humans return to cooperative protocols. They threatened trade sanctions. They hinted at expulsion from the Alliance. Chris Langley stood before the council one last time. He didn't raise his voice. He just said, "You had decades to treat us fairly. You chose not to. Now you'll live with what comes next." Then he walked out. Behind him, the human delegation followed one by one until the human seats were empty. Within hours, every human-built jump gate in conquered space went offline. Not broken, just locked. Only human ships with the right codes could pass. Supply lines froze. Medical shipments stalled. A Varelian colony on the far rim ran out of oxygen recyclers, human-made, and had to beg a human freighter for help. The freighter captain asked one question. "Did your people take ours?" When they didn't answer, he turned his ship around and left. Panic spread through the Concord. Not loud panic. The quiet kind that creeps in when you realize the floor you've been standing on was built by someone you insulted. Lena sent one final data packet to every non-human scientist she once trusted. Inside was a full schematic of the neutrino relay network, with a note. "You can rebuild it. It'll take you 50 years, or you can ask us nicely. But don't lie again." No one asked nicely. Instead, the Corax struck again, bigger this time. They hit the Proxima shipyards, a massive human construction zone where new colony vessels were being built. They came with 12 warships, expecting workers and half-finished hulls. What they found was a waiting fleet. Derek Shaw stood on the bridge of the Resolute, hands steady on the command rail. Around him, 20 human warships powered up, some refitted freighters, some brand-new destroyers, all running silent, all locked onto the Corax. "Hold fire," Derek said. The Corax charged in, roaring through comms in their guttural tongue. They fired on the shipyards. Lasers cut through empty scaffolds. No one was there. The yards had been evacuated days before. Then the human fleet moved, not in a straight line. Not in a classic Concord formation. They split, twisted, flanked, using asteroid cover, solar flares, even the shipyard's own wreckage as shields. Their weapons weren't meant to kill. They targeted engines, weapon mounts, comms arrays. Within 6 hours, every Corax ship was disabled, drifting, alive but helpless. Derek opened a channel. His voice was calm, clear, and carried across every frequency in the sector. "You took our people. You tested our restraint. Now you will learn our resolve." He didn't destroy them. He left them there as a message. On Earth, people didn't cheer. They just nodded. They understood. This wasn't about revenge. It was about respect. And respect once lost had to be earned back with more than words. The Conquered watched in stunned silence. For the first time, they saw humans not as noisy newcomers, but as something else. Something they couldn't control. Something they couldn't ignore. And in the quiet that followed, humanity did not gloat. They simply went back to work, building, watching, waiting. Because they knew the real test wasn't over. The Varelians were still out there. And they had secrets far darker than the Corax raids, but now humans were ready. Not with anger. With clarity, patience had broken. What came next was not chaos. It was consequence. Part 4. The Corax armada floated in silence around Proxima, their ships dark except for blinking emergency lights. No weapons charged. No engines running. Just metal shells holding scared, confused warriors who thought they were hunting prey, and found a storm instead. Derek Shaw watched them from the bridge of the UN's Resolute, his face calm, his eyes tired. He gave the order to hold position. No one fired. No one moved. The message was already sent, but the real enemy was not the Corax. Everyone knew that now. The Corax were just tools, brutish, loud, easy to blame. The truth was quieter, colder, and wore the robes of diplomats. Lena Ruiz had spent weeks digging. Not through space, but through data. She pulled every fragment from every missing station, every medical log, every corrupted backup drive Marcus Boone had recovered. She found patterns hidden in plain sight. All the vanished humans had been scanned using Varelian neural imagers. All the voluntary departures happened within hours of those scans. And every Varelian overseer on those stations reported the same phrase: psychological incompatibility. It was a code. She was sure of it. She built a timeline, cross-referenced ship movements, traced energy signatures from hidden cargo holds. Then she found it. A Varelian freighter, the Dawn Chorus Inn, that had visited every missing station in the last year. Its logs claimed it carried only medical supplies, but its power draw didn't match. It used far more energy than a supply ship should. Like it was running something heavy, something hidden. She showed it to Chris. He didn't hesitate. He contacted Earth Command. Within hours, a stealth scout, small black, built for silence, was sent to track the Dawn Chorus. It took 3 days. The scout followed the freighter past the outer conquered borders, into a dead zone where no species claimed territory. There, the Dawn Chorus slowed near a hollowed-out asteroid. Doors opened. Drones emerged, carrying sealed pods. The scout zoomed in. The pods were labeled with human biotags. Names, dates, blood types. Inside each pod was a human, alive, barely. The scout recorded everything. Then it sent the data straight to Earth, encrypted and untraceable. Lena watched the footage in her lab alone. She saw Helen Cho, pale and thin, strapped to a table inside the asteroid lab. Wires ran from her temples to machines that pulsed with soft blue light. A Varelian scientist adjusted dials, watching readouts with calm interest. Helen's eyes were open. She was awake. Lena turned off the screen. She didn't cry. She made a call. Within 12 hours, every human colony, every ship, every research outpost received the same file. Not just the video. The full archive. Logs, ship routes, medical records, voice recordings, everything. Packaged clean, labeled clear, sent with one line. This is what they did while we waited. The Concord tried to block it. They shut down public channels, flagged it as human disinformation. But it was too late. The file spread through private networks, through trader comms, even through rebel groups and minor species who hated the Varelians too. Within a day, the truth was everywhere. The Varelian High Council called an emergency session. They denied everything, called the footage faked, said humans were framing them to seize power, but their voices shook. Their usual calm was gone. Chris Langley didn't attend the session. He stood on the observation deck of Concord Station, watching Earth rise over the curve of the moon. He knew what came next wasn't his to control. It belonged to everyone. Derek Shaw ordered the human fleet to stand down but not to disperse. They held position near key human systems, ready but still. Marcus Boone flew the Wayfarer to the edge of the dead zone, not to attack but to watch the asteroid lab. He broadcast live feed to any ship that wanted to see. And then, something unexpected happened. The Cathari Collective, one of the oldest Concord members, sent a message to Earth. Not through official channels, direct. They asked for proof. Lena sent it. Hours later, the Cathari withdrew their support from the Varelian Council. Then the Miri Swarm did the same. Then the Ulan Enclave, one by one, species that had stayed silent for centuries, began to speak. Not for humans. For themselves. Because if the Varelians could do this to humans, who were next? The Concord didn't collapse in fire. It cracked from within. Trust, once broken, could not be glued back with pretty words. On Viridia III, the Varelian staff tried to flee. Human security teams stopped them. Not with violence. Just with locked doors and calm voices. You stay until the truth is settled. Zoran, the overseer who had lied to Marcus twice, sat in his quarters, staring at the wall. He didn't resist. He knew the game was over. Back on Earth, the president addressed the world, not with a speech, but with action. He ordered every human scientist who had worked with Varelian tech to review their data for hidden backdoors. They found dozens. Neural scanners that logged brain patterns, medical patches that stored DNA, even translation implants that recorded private conversations. The Varelians hadn't just taken humans for experiments. They had been studying them for decades, quietly, patiently, like farmers watching livestock grow. But humans were not livestock. Derek Shaw received new orders. Not to attack, to escort. Human ships began guiding the disabled Corax vessels to a neutral zone. There, they handed them over to the newly formed Watcher Alliance, a group of minor species demanding transparency. The Corax, humbled and confused, surrendered without a word. Then came the hardest part, rescue. Marcus led a small team into the asteroid lab. They moved fast, quiet, armed but not aggressive. The Varelian scientists offered no resistance. They stood aside as humans freed the captives. 23 people. Weak, scared, but alive. Helen Cho was among them. She recognized Marcus the moment he entered. She didn't speak. She just reached for his hand. They brought them home, no fanfare, no parades. Just medics, warm blankets, and quiet rooms where no one asked questions until they were ready to answer. Lena visited Helen in the hospital on Luna. They sat by a window, looking at Earth. Helen spoke softly, her voice rough from disuse. "They thought we wouldn't notice," she said. "They thought we'd keep being polite." Lena nodded. "We did for too long." Helen looked at her. "What happens now?" Lena didn't smile, but her eyes were steady. Now they remember. Across the galaxy, the message was clear. Humans had not started a war. They had ended a lie. And in doing so, they had changed the balance of power, not by force, but by truth. The Varelian High Council was summoned by its own people. Not aliens. Their own citizens. Protests filled their crystal cities. Elders who had ruled for centuries were questioned, then removed. The Concord's old order was crumbling. And humanity? They stood ready, not to rule, not to punish, but to ensure it never happened again, because patience had broken. And what came after was not rage. It was responsibility. Part 5. The dust did not settle with a bang, but with a breath. After the truth spread, after the Varelian elders stepped down, after the rescued humans returned home, the galaxy held still, as if waiting to see what humanity would do next. Many expected revenge. Others feared conquest. No one expected what came. Humans did not take the seat of power. They did not demand tribute or rewrite laws in their favor. Instead, they helped build something new, a council not ruled by age or tradition, but by fairness. They called it the Assembly of Equals. Every species, no matter how small, got a voice. Even the Korax, once raiders, now sat quietly in the back rows, listening more than speaking. Chris Langley stood before the assembly on its first official day. He wore no uniform, no sash, just simple clothes. He did not speak long. He said only this: "We don't want to rule you. We just want you to remember, patience is not weakness. And when it ends, the universe changes." Then he stepped down. No applause followed. Just silence. But it was a different silence now. Not the silence of being ignored, but the silence of being heard. Lena Ruiz worked with scientists from a dozen species to rebuild trust. They shared human medical tech freely, but only after joint ethics boards reviewed every use. No more hidden scanners, no more secret logs, everything open, everything clear. The Varelians, humbled and shamed, joined the effort, not as leaders but as students. They learned what consent truly meant. Marcus Boone flew supply runs again, but now his cargo holds carried food and medicine for former enemies. He visited the Korax homeworld once, not as a soldier but as a trader. The Korax chieftain met him at the landing pad, unarmed. They shared a meal of roasted root and recycled water. No words were needed. Both understood. The past was heavy, but the future was theirs to shape. Derek Shaw remained in command of the Ewan's Resolute, but his fleet's role changed. They no longer patrolled for threats. They escorted refugee ships, helped rebuild damaged stations, and stood guard during peace talks. Their presence was not a warning anymore. It was a promise. No one would vanish in the dark again. On Earth, children still learned alien languages in school, but now they also learned about Helen Cho and the others who endured the labs, not as victims but as reminders. Teachers told the story not to frighten but to teach. Kindness without boundaries is not kindness, it is risk. And respect must be earned, not assumed. The old Concord records were not erased. They were archived. In every library, every data hub, every school across human space, one entry stayed untouched, unedited, unchallenged. No species will ever forget the moment humans' patience finally broke. It was not a boast. It was a lesson. The Varelians tried to apologize, not with grand speeches but with action. They opened their own archives, revealing centuries of quiet control, manipulation, and fear masked as order. Their young generation, raised on the new truth, demanded change. New leaders rose, ones who valued honesty over tradition. Trade returned, but differently. Humans no longer gave everything freely. They asked for fair exchange. They checked contracts twice. They walked away from deals that felt wrong, and no one called them rude for it. They were called wise. In the outer colonies, life went on. Miners dug metal on Epsilon 9. Farmers grew algae on icy moons. Engineers built new ships in the Proxima yards, but now every station had human-only emergency channels. Every crew member carried a personal beacon that bypassed conquered systems. Not out of hate, out of care. Chris visited Helen Cho one evening on Luna. She was stronger now, working as an advisor on ethical science. They sat on a balcony overlooking the Earthrise, sipping tea. "Do you think they really understand?" she asked. Chris watched the blue planet turn slowly in the black. "Some do, some never will. But they all remember." That was enough. The galaxy did not become perfect. Conflicts still flared. Misunderstandings happened. But something had shifted. No species dared dismiss a human request again. No treaty was signed without human oversight. And when a new species joined the assembly, the first thing they were told was the story of the broken patients. Not to scare them. To teach them. Years passed. The Wayfarer was retired, placed in a museum on Mars. The Ewan's Resolute still flew, now with a mixed crew, human, Ketheri, even a young Varelian cadet. Derek Shaw taught them all the same lesson. Strength is not in how hard you hit, but in when you choose not to. Lena published a paper titled Neural Ethics in Multi-Species Research. It became required reading across the assembly. She never mentioned her own pain. She wrote only about responsibility. Marcus married a botanist from Titan. They had 2 kids. He told them stories of the stars, but never the dark ones. Only the ones about courage, quiet choices, and standing together. And Earth? Earth grew quieter. Not because it had less to say, but because it no longer needed to shout to be heard. The stars themselves seemed different now. Not colder, not brighter. Just clearer, as if a fog had lifted and everyone could finally see each other for who they really were. No one forgot. Not the rescued. Not the guilty. Not the bystanders who stayed silent too long. The moment human patience broke was not the end of peace. It was the beginning of real peace, the kind built on truth, not convenience. And in the long nights when ships drifted between worlds and comms were silent, crews would sometimes whisper the old phrase not as a threat, but as a vow. Remember. Because in that word lived everything. Loss, courage, change, and the quiet power of a species that finally said, "Enough." The universe listened. And it changed,